So welcome back, everyone. We won't have to fight the rain today. It's nice to have a fine day. So what we're looking at today is osteoporosis. That's bones. And the only exposed bones in the body are teeth. And the teeth are a good illustration of what the bones are like in the rest of the body. And bones should not deteriorate with age. And there are many, many people today who are finding that their bones are deteriorating. Isn't that true? There's a group of people called the Hunsers, live in the Himalayan mountains, reported to be some of the healthiest people on the planet, who live to a very long life, and they don't have osteoporosis. Why? They don't have tests. But how do we know they don't have osteoporosis? Because, they live well into their 90s and early hundreds, and they're still walking. They're still doing everything that a person can do when their bones are nice and strong. So that's what I want to look at today. I want to look at why bones are deteriorating, and then I want to look at why bones are deteriorating and what you can do to strengthen your bones and what you can do to ease off the deterioration that is happening with many bones today. I remember when my children, because we lived in a rainforest, our homeschool, we ate a lot of our own vegetables out of the garden. And when the youngest was, I think, about 4 and the eldest was about 16, I thought it was time I just had them checked at the dentist. So I went to the dentist, and the dentist looked at all of their teeth and she said, "Your children's teeth astonish me." She said, "The teeth are so strong, the teeth have no signs of any deterioration or decay." And she said, one of the children had a little bit of decay in one area. It appears to be where the food gets caught in the tooth. But she said the teeth are so strong that the decay hasn't gone anywhere. And I thought, that's interesting. And my children weren't given fluoride tablets. And my children didn't drink water with fluoride in it. And my children didn't have cow's milk. Did you hear that? Cow's milk. Because the fact is, bones are not made out of calcium. Now that's a surprise to most people. So what are bones made of? Because to know how to keep strong bones, we need to know what they're made of and what they need. And when we look at the Hunsers living in the Himalayan mountains, they eat very little milk. They eat a little goat cheese, something like that. So they eat very little milk. So there's another proof that it's actually not cow's milk. And isn't that what we're told? You have to drink cow's milk to get your calcium. So before we look at what bones are made of, I want to look at cow's milk. Here's a glass of milk. And if that milk is tested, it has protein, and of course that's animal protein, but it also has calcium. And what happens when that animal protein is broken down in the body, only 58% is burnt as fuel. So what that does is that leaves a 42% waste, and that waste is a sulfur waste, and sulfur is an acid. And as you'll find out tomorrow, that's you are, isn't it? Got to get it right. As you'll find out tomorrow when we look at the acid-alkaline balance in the body uses the most alkaline mineral to negate an acid environment, and that most alkaline mineral is calcium. So what happens with a glass of milk? The calcium in the milk is used to negate the sulfur residue from the from the waste from burning the animal protein, how much calcium is left for our body? None. And the countries in this world that are the highest dairy consumers have the highest incidence of osteoporosis. Look at the biggest boned creatures on the planet. What are the biggest boned creatures? Cow's pretty good, elephant, giraffe, orangutan. They're all vegetarians. Where are they getting their calcium from? Well, the cow's getting their calcium from the grass that it eats. And the grass that it eats is an indication of where we can get our calcium. So let's have a look at what bones are made of. What are bones made of? Bones are made of 12 main minerals and 64 trace. That's what bones are made of, 64 trace. So what are the 12 main minerals? Boron and, yes, calcium and chromium and iron, magnesium, manganese, selenium and sulfur and silica and potassium and phosphorus and zinc. That's what bones are made of. And so it's not rocket science to determine what do bones need. That's what they need. Now, one of the problems is that calcium has a nickname, and it's called the king. And the reason why calcium is called the king is because when calcium gets into the body, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of calcium and come into the cell. And the gardener calls calcium the trucker, because if you increase calcium in the soil, all the other minerals, they piggyback into the back of the calcium truck, so you actually increase all the minerals. So where are we going to get all of those minerals? Seawater. Dr. Robert Thompson, Dr. Robert Thompson, who wrote the book The Calcium Lie, very interesting book. He said the clearest indicator he believes of a creator God is seawater, because he said seawater is the exact same mineral balance and proportion as is found not only bones and tissues and body fluids. See, when you think about it, when you cry, it's salty. When we perspire, it's salty. We're salty people. Dr. Jacques de Langry, he calls these body fluids our internal ocean. Our internal ocean. And as we've looked at several times this week, our body runs according to this precision balance. Well, I've got some good water. I've got some good news. You don't have to drink seawater. It's not very nice, is it? But what you can do is you can eat the whole salt. And we looked at that yesterday when we looked at the heart. Seawater contains 92 minerals. And the Celtic salt, which is the best salt, which is the hand-harvested sea salt, it contains 82. So all of those minerals in the exact balance and proportion. But do you remember what I said? When calcium gets in, that's why it's called the king, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of it. So how does it get into the cell? Any guesses? Let's have a look. How does calcium get into the cell? Here's calcium, and all those other minerals are waiting to get on the back. It comes from the sunshine. Vitamin D. Vitamin D. The ultraviolet rays from the sun hit the skin. and they convert a form of cholesterol just under the skin to vitamin D. What do they convert? Cholesterol. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, in his book, The Great Cholesterol Con, he said for the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. That's cholesterol. Notice what he calls it? For the first time, this vital body nutrient is being called a disease, which is cholesterol. If you don't have enough cholesterol levels, you can't even make your vitamin D. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, the calcium can't get in. And if the calcium can't get in, all the other minerals can't get in. So we need sunshine. But there are a few things that must be present for you to be able to get your vitamin D. Number one, you need to have a nice bit of oil on your skin. So if you have a shower and wash your body with soap and then lay in the sun, you won't get any vitamin D. And if you lay out in the sun and get all hot and sweaty and go and have a shower and wash your body with soap, you won't get any vitamin D. So if you do have a shower, you need to leave at least a couple of hours for the oils to start basically being released and made in your skin. And if you do lay it in the sun, which you're going to want to do to get your vitamin D, if you do lay out in the sun and you get hot and sweaty, you can jump in the shower and just have a shower. But if it's chlorinated water, it will interfere with your body being able to do that. But if you lay it in the sun and dive in the creek or dive in the sea, you will still make your vitamin D. I can't believe that they put chlorine even in the water we shower in, because we're not ingesting it, it's on the outside. When I was the gardener at Misty Mountain Health Retreat in 2020, because we were locked down, so I became the gardener, and I would garden every morning, and I would just have, we call it a singlet, I think you call it a tank top, yep. Just have a little tank top and I'd be gardening. I wouldn't have a hat on because I would garden from 8 till 10 in the morning. So the sun's not really hot then. So I would garden and I got very, very brown. You see, the darker the skin, the more sun you can handle. And the darker the skin, the more sun you need. They found that when dark-skinned people began to live in the UK, and we know the very sad story of it was the slave trade. The slaves were taken to be slaves in the big fancy houses. And also I found out something else. And when I was in, I think it was 4 years ago, when I was in London giving meetings, I was talking to some people at Sheffield, and they said, after the war, and I didn't realise how extensive some of those towns and cities in England had been bombed. In fact, there was one town where they said there were 500 bombing raids. I had no idea that London was bombed so extensively, or in England. And so there was a lot of houses to be built. And what they did was they went to Jamaica, and they offered very cheap passage to get people from Jamaica to come to, and the West Indies to come to England to help build the houses, which they did. So that's some of the reasons why there's quite a large dark-skinned people living in London. But they found that when the dark-skinned people went to live in London, their heart disease, the rate of heart disease skyrocketed. And that again shows how vitamin D is so important for every single function in the body. There are 2,500 receptor sites on the DNA for vitamin D. And of course that DNA is all through every single cell in the body. Because the dark skin needs, well, I've got a friend who is very, very dark. Sometimes you get very, very dark, almost black, and then you get mid. She needs 10 times the sun that I need. And you know what? She can endure 10 times the sun that I can. I've got what they often call milky skin. So I have to do it a little bit carefully. So when I was gardening in 2020, little by little with that early morning sun, I got darker and darker and darker. And of course, once your skin gets nice and dark, then you can be out there for quite a long period of time. And when I'd finished my garden, I was perspiring, I was dirty, and on my way home I'd stop and I'd dive in the creek and I would just get the sand and wash the dirt off with the sand. I just got in the creek, so I knew that I was getting my vitamin D because no soap to wash away those natural oils that are in the skin. They found that in Norway between, I think it was about 1998 to 2004, that skin cancer skyrocketed 200%. Why? Why? Well, you know what they found? That the Norwegians weren't spending as much time outside. There are more Norwegians that were living in the city and they're in the buildings, whereas traditionally a lot of them were outside. There was a lot of farming and a lot of them were outside. And the other one was they're wearing sunscreen. Skin cancer skyrocketed. You know what they're finding today? That vitamin D deficiency is contributing to skin cancer. And I know in Australia, you've probably heard a lot of Australians, they live out in the sun and they're like lizards when they're getting in their 60s, 70s, and skin cancer's quite high. And so in Australia, there's this, it's probably been around for about 30 years now, it's called slip, slop, slap. And you'll see big signs, slip, slop, slap. And it says the slip is to slip a top on, slap a hat on, and slop the sunscreen on. I guess it's a bit of Aussie slang. In other words, they're saying to Aussies, don't go outside, don't go in the sun unless you're covered, you've got a hat, and you've got the sunscreen on. And my son, he went on a boat ride out to the Great Barrier Reef. You've heard of the Great Barrier Reef? You used to be able to see in the 50s the Great Barrier Reef, this incredible coral just off the shore. Now you have to go 5 kilometres out. And my son was talking to the boat driver, and the boat driver says it's the sunscreen. William said, the sunscreen? He said, yeah, it's the sunscreen. It's killing the coral. You see, you look at those chemicals that are on the sunscreen and they're in nanoparticles. It's like zinc oxide. Zinc oxide, not a problem. But when it's converted into nanoparticle sizes, nanoparticles means barely measurable. And you've probably heard of the spike protein causing nanoparticle clotting. That's barely measurable, and you put a whole lot of those little clots together, you've got bigger clots, and that's one of the problems. But another problem with the nanoparticle clotting is it can get into the tiny little capillaries. That's in the brain, that's in the eyes, and those tiny little capillaries only take one blood cell. So the nanoparticles that are in the sunscreens, it just makes it so that they can make a nice cream, so it can spread on your skin. But those nanoparticles are getting into the coral, into the marine life. They've found them in the coral, and it's killing them because they're poisons. And as nanoparticles, you know what that means to us humans. It means that it can get through the blood-brain barrier and hurt us humans. We also talked about the other day the skin. Remember, the skin can breathe, the skin can throw off waste, and the skin can absorb. So be very careful what you put on your skin. So people say to me, do you use sunscreen, or what sunscreen do you use? And I say, I use nothing. I use nothing. I don't put any of that on my skin. I never put it on any of the kids' skin. And we live about an hour and a half from the beach. So when we go to the beach with the kids for the day, they all had to have 4 t-shirts, 4 board shorts, and 4 peaked hats. And early morning they could take the top off, but starting to get to 9:30, 10 when the sun is strong, they have the t-shirt, and then when they get wet then they can change it. But they've got rashy shirts now, and they're those nylon-y things. But I actually wanted my kids to get a bit of sun, because that sun means their skin are getting a little bit darker, but of course if you overdo the sun you get burnt. And so what Aussies have done is they've gone from overdoing the sun to now underdoing the sun, because slip, slop, slap has not reduced skin cancer. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and get different results, because we actually need the sun. And osteoporosis, that's quite big now. And of course that is vitally linked with vitamin D deficiency. Because you can be having calcium, and where do we get our calcium? And remember, we want calcium the way it's found in nature with all the other minerals. So sources of calcium, very similar to what the cows eat. Dark green leafy vegetables. I had some kale for lunch today, which was very nice. And remember, you do not lose your minerals when you cook it. You've still got your minerals. Dark green leafy vegetables, we should be having dark green leafy vegetables every day, and they're phenomenally high in minerals. Number 2, Celtic salt. You don't have to drink seawater. All you have to do is have a tiny little crystal of Celtic salt before every glass of water. Dr. Robert Thompson says if you have a little bit of Celtic salt before each glass of water, what's that, 8 times a day, all you will do is replace the minerals you lost yesterday. And when you're perspiring a lot, yes, you need even more, because you're losing more. So that's an easy way to do it. So don't spend money on calcium supplements, because a lot of them will just end up on your bones as bone spurs. And that's why the cows have such big, strong bones, is because they're eating grass all day long. That's where they're getting their calcium. They're getting calcium in the way God planned or designed for us to get our calcium, which is the dark green leafy vegetables, every day. So when my children were little, the first thing on the table at lunchtime was a salad. Because if you put salad on the table and baked potatoes, this is what I had for lunch today, baked potatoes, corn, local corn's very nice, and then looked like barlotti beans, I think. If you put that on the table, what's the first thing that people want to go to? Potatoes, corn. So what I used to do is I put the salad on the table first. And they're hungry, they haven't eaten since the last meal. And they eat it. One lady said to me, she used to put a platter on the table with all little sticks of celery, cucumber, snow peas, carrots, and a bowl of hummus or guacamole dip. And what do kids love doing? Dipping. And so encourage the family to eat more salad and have delicious dressings. Lemon, oil, Celtic salt, crushed garlic, just that's pretty nice. Shake it up with a bit of tahini and it'll become creamy. Food should taste fantastic, isn't that true? My daughter, when she was 15, her girlfriend came for lunch. And when she ate the salad, she said, if my mum's salad tastes like this, I'd eat it. In other words, what's her mum's salad like? Maybe limp, old. We should have lettuce that snaps. We should have cucumber that snaps. We should have the best quality. Yeah. And I'm always saying to the staff, what are those cucumbers doing in the fridge? And they're not in plastic, because you know what happens if you just put them in the fridge, they go bendy. And we want cucumber that'll snap. Or you can get containers to keep them in. And so there's where we get our greens. That's the main source of of our minerals is in the Celtic salt. And yes, when I opened my baked potato, I liberally poured the oil in and then put the Celtic salt all over the top. Best way to eat potatoes. Hippocrates said, let food be our medicine and medicine be our food. But what we also need for strong bones is vitamin D. Vitamin D is essential in the assimilation and the utilisation of calcium. So when vitamin D is present, it pulls the calcium into the cell and all the other minerals piggyback on the back of calcium. So we need that vitamin D. How much sun do you need in a day to get all the vitamin D that you need? Well, the good news is that our body stores vitamin D quite well. And how much exposure to the sun? Well, how long's a piece of string? I'm looking around at everyone here today and I think everyone's got slightly different skin. My father had olive skin, dark brown eyes, dark brown hair. My mother had very light skin and her hair was light with a little orange tinge and blue eyes. I have the blue eyes and I have it was blonde as a child, lighter hair. And I have mum's skin from my face up and dad's skin from my neck down, so I can get quite brown. So it's just getting to know your skin. So Howard, our exercise coordinator at Misty Mountain, I think I mentioned him, he's Dutch Indonesian and his wife is English Samoan. And they have 2 boys and their boys have got dark skin and they've got, slightly dark skin. And Carsten, he does all the mowing on the ride-on mower and he's out there in the middle of summer, no hat, no shirt, and he's getting darker and darker and darker. But to be able to do that, he's got to drink a lot of water. In fact, the only time a person can really get sunstroke is if they're dehydrated. And then my grandson, Sonny, comes along and he's about a year younger and he loves getting on the other ride-on mower and mowing with Carsten. But he has very light skin. So when he came up in the summer holidays, we put a hat on him and we put a long sleeve shirt on him and long jeans and he went mowing. And that night when he came in, this part of his hand was bright red and the back of his neck was bright red. He can't have the sun touch him. And he's mowing next to Carsten that hasn't got any top on, no hat. Anyway, good old aloe vera. I'm sure we all realise every home should have a pot of aloe vera. So we opened the leaf and just smeared it all over his burnt skin, which was bright red. And then we did it after his shower. And every 20 minutes we put another layer on. And when he woke up in the morning, by the time he went to bed it had dried, there was hardly any redness in his skin. So now when Sonny goes to mow the lawn, we have a collared shirt, we have cotton gloves and the sun doesn't even touch him. But early morning and late afternoon, we let him have just a little bit. So it's just getting to know the skin. And yet his brother goes really brown. So it's just getting to know your skin. When you have light hair and blue eyes, you're usually a little bit more susceptible to the sun. So it's just knowing how much you can take. So when Michael and I had a holiday in Thailand last year, every morning I'd go out to lay in the sun and I wouldn't wear sunscreen. I'd take my watch and I know that I can handle 15 minutes front, 15 minutes back and then under the umbrella. In the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, 15 minutes front, 15 minutes back underneath the umbrella. And after 5 days, I've got a golden tan. Now that golden tan came from the UVB rays. And that tan will last months and months and months. And it is the UVB rays that convert to vitamin D. Have you ever been in the car and the sun's coming through the window and your skin gets burned? That's UVA ultraviolet A rays. It's the UVB rays we want, and the sunscreen blocks UVB and UVA. And when someone goes to a tanning salon and they go under those ultraviolet lights, it's ultraviolet A. And that tan, it actually goes quite quickly. So the UVB rays are the ones that you want. Yes, they will burn if you're out there too long. And if your skin gets burnt, unfortunately you can't go back out in the sun for probably another week. So it's just getting to know how much sun you need. One person said, shouldn't you be out of the sun in the middle of the day? Well, in the middle of the day, that's the most powerful sun. And you don't need very much. You might only need, if you've got really light skin, you might only need 5 minutes. Now, even a dark-skinned person can get burnt. Because my husband, his first wife was Aboriginal, so both Michael's children are dark-skinned. And his daughter, she plays the piano, she's very good on the computer, very good brain-eye girl. So she loves indoors. And she went to the beach with her friends, and she hadn't had sun for a long time. And she was very sore that night, but we couldn't see it because she's dark-skinned. And then over the next week, she started to peel, but all that happened was she became patchy. There was darker bits and lighter bits, and that showed me, yes, a dark-skinned person can get burnt. But probably whereas I would start at 15 minutes, they can start it easy at half an hour. So little by little by little, get the skin used to the sun. If someone's vitamin D levels are low, they may need initially to have a supplement to get their vitamin D levels up within the recommended daily, the RDA. So that's something you could check, or you could just make sure that your skin is, you haven't just had a shower and you go out to the sun, but also remember the chlorine. So if you are hot and sweaty, you're best to dive in a creek or a lake or the sea. That won't wash it away. Once you've been out in the sun, it takes 2 hours for your skin to develop the vitamin D. So you've got to leave that little bit of time before you maybe have a shower with soap. So there are a few things that are necessary for taking up the vitamin D. Sunshine's important, so I'm going to look at a few things. One is skin, and we need the sun on the skin to produce the vitamin D, because that's what our bones need. Our bones are made of calcium. It's one thing to ensure that we're eating enough minerals, but it's another thing to ensure that we're having enough sun exposure. Your eyes need sun because your eyes are an extension of your brain. And your brain gets sun through the eyes. The ultraviolet rays from the sun go through neurochemical pathways and go through the eye and hit the pineal gland. And tonight we're going to look at the pineal gland in detail, and it's important in sleep. The more sun you have in the day, the better you sleep at night. We'll be looking at that. Also, when the pineal gland is stimulated, that boosts your serotonin, so great for mood. It was in about it's probably 20 years ago now, a group of scientists discovered on the retina a site that they named melanopsin. A melanopsin absorbs blue light. Yes, in there, melanopsin. And melanopsin absorbs blue light. And this receptor site, melanopsin for the blue light, it's not involved with sight. It's involved with brain function. And that's why if you're wearing glasses, please try not to wear them for a period of time outside, because your brain needs sun and the glasses block those rays. If you can't see very well, hold on to something. I never suggest you look at the sun, but just being outside. Just being outside, those rays will go through. And when someone has adequate amounts of blue light going in, their tactical reasoning increases, their ability to solve mathematical problems increases. We've got a big problem in Australia today, and that is because there was so much skin cancer, you know, the huge reaction. Remember, put not your trust in princes, the authorities, that in schools today, every school playground has to have a screen over it, and children cannot go outside unless they've got a hat and sunscreen on. How crazy is that? And so those children, their teeth, their bones are going to be deteriorating far too young. So a lady said to me, Barbara, my little girl goes to childcare and she's not allowed out of the classroom unless she has sunscreen on. What do I do? Well, a lot of health food shops now sell, or places like Trader Joe's, Sprouts, they sell natural sunscreens. And there are a couple of natural sunscreens. One is aloe vera and bergamot essential oil. But if you're out in the sun for a couple of hours, even if you have those on, you're going to get burnt. So I said to this lady, what I would do is I'd buy a little tube of aloe vera and I'd buy a little tube of some sort of sunscreen they sell in the chemist. I'd squeeze out all the chemical sunscreen. You could probably put it on some weeds that you wanted to kill. And I'd scoop up the aloe vera into that tube. You're not lying, because aloe vera is a natural sunscreen. It nourishes the skin. But we have also found, as I mentioned before, that when you are dehydrated, you burn a lot easier. So that brings us also back to hydration. And remember, the quickest way to hydrate the body is to take that little crystal of Celtic salt, which pulls the water inside the cell. So we need sun, and we need sun for quite a few reasons. I wonder if those children that aren't having any exposure to sun, and the other things happening too with children today is they're spending so much more time indoors because of technology. One lady said to me, every year we live in a little cul-de-sac. She said every year the kids all come out and show the Christmas presents. They've got a scooter, or they've got a bike, or they've got a skateboard. She said this year no kid came out. Where were they? All inside in technology. And so that's what I say, in a home, children have to earn time on technology. It's great. Is your room clean? Is your bed made? Is all your homework done? Is the dishwasher emptied? Etc, etc, etc. Okay, you can have 10 minutes. Did you hear that? They earn that time on technology. And the internet gets shut off at night, yeah? Turned off. My two granddaughters came up to Misty Mountain. Our grandkids love coming to Misty Mountain and working in the health centre. And one was 14 and one was 16. And they were staying at our house. I was away. And Micah said, in the evening, I don't even see them. They're in their rooms. So we said, I turned the internet off. 10 minutes later, Pa, I'm not able to get anything. And Michael said, yeah, I've turned the internet off. It goes off here at night. You can come out and talk to me. And he said they had some wonderful evenings together. They played games, they shared stories. I just think it's so sad that the social interaction that we should be having is just getting killed by this internet. So the sun's important. Yesterday we had a look at hormones. And we had a look at two main hormones, and remember mother hormone? Mother hormone is progesterone. And progesterone is the hormone that stimulates your bone building cells. They're called osteoclast. Osteoblast. Osteo means bone and blast means new, blast of new bone. So it is progesterone that stimulates osteoblast cells. They're the new bones. Whereas estrogen's the hormone that stimulates osteoclast. So what are the osteoclast cells? Osteoclast cells, they take away the old bone, and it's estrogen that stimulates osteoclast cells. Now what we looked at yesterday was that there are many things that are causing a rise in estrogen and a drop in progesterone. The contraceptive pill does that, exposure to chemicals does that, exposure to plastics do that, eating animal food that has been given growth stimulants, that does it. There's a whole lot of things that can cause this disruption of hormones, and the disruption is that mother, remember we talked about progesterone being the mother hormone? The mother hormone, and we call her mother because mother hormone, she balances all of the other. And so with things like the chemicals and the exposure to the contraceptive pill, and we also find it if a woman's been through IVF to try and get a baby, what that does is that boosts estrogen to make more eggs. And how sad that that lady is having major hormonal problems now. And one of them is osteoporosis. Because what happens with this imbalance, what happens when progesterone levels drop and estrogen levels rise, now we're getting a loss in osteoblast cells. And we're getting an increase in osteoclast cells. So what's happening is more and more bone is being taken away, and as God designed it to be, it should be a balance. So the old bone comes away and the new bone comes in. The old bone goes away, the new bone comes in. But when you've got too much estrogen, more and more bone is being taken away. And because progesterone is low, it's not coming in to replace the old bone. And so a hormonal imbalance is a big contributing factor to osteoporosis. So anyone with osteoporosis should be on the hormone balancing cream. And the hormone balancing cream stimulates progesterone. And remember, when mother hormone, when you get progesterone levels up, the mother now is in control, making new bone. And remember what we call that? Happy hormone. Keeping estrogen under control, and I likened estrogen to fire and water, good slave, bad master. It's an important hormone, but not in large amounts. We can't live without water, but oh dear, when there's a flood, whole houses can be swept away. So water's not bad, it's just when it's overdone. It's the same with estrogen. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you through the Sustain Me principles and show you how adhering to the Sustain Me principles boosts bone. Sunshine. Sunshine allows our body to make vitamin D, and vitamin D is essential in the assimilation and the utilisation of calcium. But bones aren't just made of calcium, and calcium's called the king because when it gets into the cell, it pulls all the other minerals with it. Use of water. Not only does every tissue cell need water, but the bone cells need water. And it's inside the bone that our bone marrow is where our blood is made. And what's our blood? Mostly water. So for proper bone function, we need to be having 8 ounce glasses of water a day. Spread it out. This is how I do it. I wake up in the morning, I have half a glass of water and a little bit of salt. I go to the bathroom, I have another half glass of water. I get dressed, I have another half glass of water, and that time a little bit of salt. I pray, I have another half glass of water. See, spread it out, spread it out, spread it out. And our body can access and utilise it much better. Remember how God sends the rain? Little by little by little. Sleep tonight, we will discover that's in those early hours of the night where healing accelerates in the body. It's in the early hours of the night that the new bones, those osteoblast cells, the blast of new bone, are most active in the early parts of the night. Trust in God. Stress interferes with every body function. So it's learning to trust God. Psalm 146, verse 3, and put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish. Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob is his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, which made heaven, earth, sea, and the fountain of waters. The next few verses talk about setting the prisoners free and lifting those that are bowed down. So trust in God that he's given us an amazing body and the bones are not meant to deteriorate. And the way to help with stress is to live every moment and love every moment. Love where you are, love who you are, love what age you're at. I know a young friend of mine, when she was 25, she said, I reckon you wish you were 25. I said, no way. I reckon you wish you were 55. She'd never heard the likes. You know, love what you have and where you are. Abstain. It's another big problem today with bones, losing minerals, is a lot of stimulants are leaching the minerals. So what are the stimulants that are leaching the minerals out? Because it's one thing to get sun, and it's another thing to take those minerals, but it's also another thing not to take anything that's going to leach the minerals. So some of the biggest mineral leachers are refined sugar. One of the reasons why refined sugar causes tooth decay is because it's leaching the minerals when you eat it. One writer said that sugar leaves the body better dressed than when it went in. What did it go in dressed with? Well, it was naked actually. Went in naked. No minerals at all. But it comes out dressed with our minerals, because remember, the most alkaline substance is calcium. And there's a reason why it's called the king. It's the most alkaline. When it gets in, boosts all the other minerals. But it's been misunderstood, and people think that to get strong bones you need to take calcium supplements. It's not true. The money you spend on the calcium supplements you can spend on the Celtic salt. You can spend on organic, dark green leafy vegetables. So my children grew up in a rainforest. We ate a lot of greens out of the garden. They ate them because that's all they ever had. They always had greens. They used to fall out of their Tarzan vines in the bush and fall off horses. No broken bones. No broken bones, and yet they didn't have fluoride in their water, and they didn't have fluoride tablets, and they didn't drink the cow's milk. And I think their bones were so strong because they were getting high minerals. And I didn't give them any refined sugar. Refined sugar not only leaches the minerals out and weakens the bones and weakens the teeth, but on the outside, one of the biggest causes of tooth decay is food getting caught between the teeth. Have you ever flossed your teeth and then smelt? Rotten. Because it's in a warm environment. why after every meal, if you don't get to clean your teeth, please floss it, and you can't floss it, just go to the bathroom and rinse your mouth out a few times. You'll be amazed at all the little bits that come out between your teeth. And if you can clean them and if you can floss them, even better. But when we're travelling, when we're out, it's not always possible. So what happens is that it starts to rot between the teeth. And then the person has sugar. And what does the sugar do to the microbes that are eating up that bit of food between your teeth? Blah, just multiplies. It's like putting kerosene on a fire. And then they start eating at the dentine. So number one, sugar's leaching from the minerals from the inside, and number two, it's feeding those microbes that are breaking down those bits of food left between your teeth and just feeding them, so they start to eat the dentine. Also caffeine. Caffeine is a big mineral leacher, specifically calcium and magnesium, the caffeine takes out. Alcohol. Alcohol's a toxic poison, and when any toxic poisons go in the body has to use its minerals, specifically the calcium again, because it's the most alkaline mineral, to calm down that acidity. As you'll see in the lecture tomorrow on the acid-alkaline balance, all your stimulants have an acid effect. Drugs. Drugs are chemicals, and all chemicals have an acid effect in the body. So it's important to stop anything that can leach the minerals out of our body. And our bones are made of minerals. Inhale through the nose. Have you been practicing? Inhale and exhale through the nose. The nose purifies the air, warms the air, humidifies the air, balances blood gases, and it also pressurizes the air, so it's perfect for the lungs. And our cells in our bones have energy cycles in them because they're constantly making the new bone, taking the old bone away. So we need that oxygen inside our bones, nutrition. We looked at the 3 essential food groups. Fibre. We should be having high fibre. This is all your fruits and vegetables. We need to be having generous proteins. The new bone cells are made up of protein. It's the amino acids that's the breakdown from the protein that we eat. That's your legumes, your nuts, your seeds. And also great fats, healthy fats, fats as they come from the hand of the Creator. That's what our bones need. Our bones need peak nutrition to keep our teeth strong, to keep our bones strong. Moderation. I don't suggest half a cup of oil a day. And if we have too much salt, the food's just not nice, is it? So moderation in all the good things. Exercise. Yes, we know that exercise strengthens muscle, but exercise strengthens bones. And the best bone building exercises, or the best exercises overall, are defying gravity exercises. It's defying gravity that strengthens. And the best gravity defying exercise is rebounding or the trampolining. Make strong bones, get the kids a trampoline. You don't have to ask them to go out there, do you? The only time you might is if you let them have technology all day. But remember, that goes away, that goes highway. And they earn it. And they earn their time on it. One lady said, my little 7-year-old girl, she's allowed half an hour every Sunday. But every time I look around, she's got the phone. I said, oh, it's real easy. Every time you see her with the phone, you take 5 minutes off Sunday. Another 5 minutes off Sunday. And then Sunday comes and the mother says, sorry, sweetheart, but you've used all your time up. Do you think she's going to grab for the phone next week? See, it's the best way to teach children is just cause and effect. There's a result for every action. It's very, very, very clear. Very clear. So exercise strengthens muscle, but exercise also strengthens bones. When you leap on the trampoline, every single cell in the body's been strengthened, and that includes the bones. Something else is happening with bones, and that is around bones are muscles, ligaments, and tendons. If you ever looked at an anatomy and physiology book, every home should have an anatomy and physiology book. If you look in an anatomy and physiology book, often they'll have a picture of the bones, then the next picture is the ligaments on the bones, and then the next picture is the tendons on the bones, and then the next picture is the muscles on the bones. And even though the blood supply to the bone isn't strong, the blood supply to the muscles and the ligaments and the tendons is. And when you strengthen those muscles, ligaments, tendons, you increase blood supply to the area. And because they encase the bone, they nourish the bone. And for blood to be a nourisher, we need to be drinking adequate water. Remember what the blood carries? It carries water. We need to be inhaling in and out through our nose to ensure that we're getting adequate oxygen. We need to be eating nourishing food, as much organic as you can. At our retreat, we're not 100% organic. We do the best we can. That's why one of the easiest things to grow is greens. Put your greens in. Even in the winter time, have your greens on your windowsill. My daughter, who lives in Wisconsin, she grows microgreens through her winter months. Those dark green leafy vegetables as much as possible, because they are the highest in minerals. Your vegetables are the highest in minerals, and of your vegetables, the highest of your vegetables is your dark green leafy vegetables. Don't throw the leaves away on your celery. That's what I put into my soups and my stews, is those celery leaves. They're very high in minerals. And when you eat a strawberry off a tree, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? I ate blueberries straight off the blueberry tree. Don't you wash them? Why would I wash them? Why would you wash them? I just put it straight in my mouth. The taste is incredible. What am I tasting? Minerals. Minerals. Now, if it was sprayed, I'd wash them. If it had dirt on it, I'd wash it. But when you're picking straight off a tree, there's no dirt or sprays there. There's no need to wash it. And you know what's on it is vitamin B12. Just very small amounts, but you don't need very much. Remember, vitamin B12 is an airborne bacteria, so you'll find it on your homegrown vegetables. And vitamin B12 is important for brain health. So with exercise, my suggestion is you rebound every day. Haven't got a rebounder? Ideally you get a rebounder, because they're just the best exercise. And I understand that you have snow all winter, is that right? And so this is the best exercise through the winter months. One lady said, yeah, we've got a trampoline out the back. And I said, yeah, but you'll never get there. But if you have the little trampoline in your house, the little rebounder, then you will get there. And you have to make an appointment with yourself. Otherwise you won't get on the rebounder. I was talking to a man recently and he said, I had a major back injury. I was talking to him a few months ago in Wisconsin at my granddaughter's graduation. I had not met him before. He was very fit for a man who was in his 60s. So I was interested in his story. He said, I had a car accident, I had a major back injury. And he said, I started to go to a physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist showed him how he could build his core muscles up and also build his body up. So he said, I did exactly what the physiotherapist said. Do you know not many people do? I always say to the people, have you been to a physiotherapist? Yeah. Have you done what they said? Oh, well, sometimes. You don't sometimes eat, do you? Have you noticed you eat every day? You do it every day, every day, every day. He said, I got off all my medication, and my physiotherapist said to me, when you start core strengthening exercises, push-ups and all the different stretches he was given, the blood supply to the muscles increases. And so the blood supply to the tendons and the ligaments increase. And they encase the bone. And the physiotherapist said to him, they now nourish the bone because the bone's blood supply is not great. So what you're going to do is you can increase blood supply to the muscles, ligaments, tendons that surround the bone. And the physiotherapist said to him, I've done x-rays on people and the bone has grown. Did you hear that? The bone injury has recovered and even grown. But it takes work. It takes work. And he said, oh, I am pain-free now. He said, I never thought I'd be pain-free. He said, all medicine could offer me was painkillers. They said, you've got a serious injury. Remember what my husband says, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I'm going to show them that this can revive and restore, and it can. And that's where exercise is such an important part of bone strength and bone health. So there are 2 rebounders you can buy. The two best, really. These are the 2 that we have. And the Bellicon is the best. Please don't buy a $25 rebounder. You may as well jump on the ground. Well, can you jump on the ground? When you jump on the ground, you don't get the cushioning and the shock absorber effect like you get on the rebounder. And I was reading the story of Albert Carter in his book, Rebounding for Life, I think something like that it's called. And he said that he's had quite a few runners come to him, and they're in their 40s, and they've got pelvic problems, they've got lower back problems, knee, joint problems because of the jarring for many years of running. Well, he gets them on the rebounder, and he said within 6 months, he said their joints aren't painful anymore. Because when you rebound, you've got this shock absorber. And not only when you jump on the rebounder, it springs you up in the air. And so when you come down, every cell in the body is like this. And that's your bones as well as your muscles, your ligaments and your tendons. The Bellicon has rubber straps. And probably one of the best of your springs is the knee duck. I think it's like that. You see, when you have springs, the springs should be like this. So the springs that are on the edge of the rebounder should be like that. You may get other brands, I do not know, but I just know that they are 2 of the best rebounders. So we have 2 Bellicons and two knee ducks at our retreat, and we have 1 of each in our gym, and we have another 1 of each on the veranda at the lodge. So if people can't walk very well, they can get on the rebounder. If people are unstable on their feet, you can get a bar so that you can hold on. And especially for people who aren't used to it, people who are more elderly, the best way to start is this. That's called the health bounce.
What makes these ones better than like the regular ones that you
I guess you'd have to investigate and compare.
Okay.
But we paid $1,000 for our Bellicon, but we our $1,000 is probably equal to your
600.
Yeah, your 600, and also it's made in America, so we had to pay for postage going over.
But if we just have a regular rebounder, not to use that?
What you will find is that if you get a cheap rebounder, they can break, and they're almost like jumping on the ground. So that's why you want, it's like anything that you buy, the more you pay, the better you get, the better quality.
But is it going to give us the same?
No, it's not. It's not. And that's why I mentioned these two. Okay. Because the better quality ones are better and safer on the body. Yep. And you'll have them for a long, long time. Anyone that's been on the Bellicon and had a Bellicon, they will not use anything else. Because it's such a difference, such a difference. You can even go into a shop maybe where they've got them and jump on them, try them. And you'll see the difference. What Albert Carter, who I first read a book of his written in the 80s, he's got another book now, I think it was reprinted in 2017, and in this book there are pictures of his son. In the 80s there's pictures of him and he's built like this, and all he does is rebound. And then in the more modern book there's pictures of his son and daughter, and they're doing the different exercises on the rebounder. It has incredible benefits. On Friday, when I talk about exercise in more detail, I'll be talking about the many benefits of the rebounder in regard to the lymphatic system, in regard to eyesight, in regard to so many areas. But today we're talking about the benefits in regard to bone and bone strength. So part of building bones is working bones, utilising bones, and the best is for strengthening bone is the rebounder. You can also rebound with weights in your hands, because strength comes by exercise and bone strength comes by exercise. And to be careful on your lower back. I mentioned the other day the biggest bones in the body are your femur. The biggest muscle mass in your body is your femur. And when you bend, you should be lifting from here. And if you bend with a curved back, all the weight goes to your lower back. But if you bend with a straight back, bend your knees, all the weight goes on your femur and on your quads. And I know our massage therapists, when they massage, this is how they massage. They're massaging from their thighs, from their femur. So just think about why God made that the biggest bone, and also the quads, the biggest muscle mass in the body, because that's what we should be bending and lifting and moving from. Many people have lower back problems. And one of the reasons is that they're dehydrated, because 75% of upper body weight is held in your lower back by water. 75%. So if you're dehydrated, you'll often feel it in your lower back. So water is important. We need sunshine for the vitamin D to get the calcium to have strong bones. Going to bed early at night, going to bed and getting those early hours of the night so that the repair is happening. Assessing stress in your life, taking away everything that can leach those minerals out of the body. Even a high meat, high dairy diet can, because as I showed you, is it still up on the board? No, it's not, that animal protein only burns at 58% fuel, and that calcium is used to negate that sulfur residue. If the person has a big steak, there's not enough calcium in that steak to negate that sulfur residue. And so where's the calcium going to be taken from now? Out of our bones. So the high acid diet is also a contributing factor to leaching the minerals out of the bones. So all of these pieces have to be in the equation for strong bones. And there is a herb, and it's called knit bone. And this herb has the ability to knit and strengthen bones. It's called comfrey. And comfrey contains a growth stimulant. And that growth stimulant is called a lantern. Comfrey also does something else. Because for us to be able to move and bend, we've got joints. Isn't that right? Joints. And those joints need to be well lubricated so that they don't hurt. And what lubricates them is synovial fluid, and synovial fluid is 99% water. And when we're dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should, and water's taken out of our joints. Because the body must maintain full blood volume in the arteries and in the veins. So if we're dehydrated, sometimes bits of water can be taken out of the synovial fluid to maintain that full blood volume. So keep hydrated. But the comfrey contains a lubricant. And that lubricant is able to help lubricate the joints. And comfrey also has an anti-inflammatory properties. And often, if there's irritation or injury, you get inflammation. So it's a perfect herb for bones.
How do you take comfrey?
Ideally, you apply it to the skin. So you can buy comfrey cream, or you can grow comfrey, and in the spring and the summer you use the leaves, and in the autumn, or you call it fall, and in the winter you can dig up the roots. So we had a lady at our retreat a few years ago. My son William was only 14 at the time, and she was Lebanese, and she was in her early 50s, and she was our cleaning lady, and she wanted William to teach her how to ride the motor scooter. And he was teaching her how to ride the motor scooter, and she was going really fast. He said, "Slow down, Katie." And she thought if you pull the handlebars back, it slowed down, but it actually went faster. And a brick wall was coming up, so she quickly moved it sideways and went over and had a bad crash. And when William ran up to her, say this is her, there's her knee and there's her ankle, the bone was sticking up like that, not through the skin. Now, we had a young man working for us at a time as a teacher, and his name was Malbone Lang. And he was from Malaysia, and his grandfather was a bone expert, so he'd been taught in natural ways of helping bones. And he came running up, he said, "Hold your breath, Katie," and he went, "Ooh," and he said it. And then the ambulance came, and they took her away, and they blew up a big balloon to keep her bone in place. And when they x-rayed it, they found a total break of her tibia, her fibula, and a crushed knee. And they said she will need pins and plates to set that in place. But it was so swollen, twice they wheeled her into surgery, and the surgeon said it's too swollen. So she's in her hospital bed for about a week, and we were visiting her every couple of days. Someone visited her every day. And after 1 week, I went in with one of the massage therapists, and her leg looked white. You know what that means? Not a lot of blood going in there, it's just still. So I got the massage therapist to start massaging her foot. And she started massaging her foot gently, and then more and more, and we're just chatting away. And after 20 minutes, her leg was pink, and her foot was nice and pink. And she said, "That feels so much better." And her husband's across the bed from me, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to take Katie home." And I said, "Do it." Oh, they were not happy with us. But you know, I'm the master of my destiny, is that right? Yes. You have every right to say, "I'm going home." Now, they had this brace around it with Velcro strips. So we took her home, and I have to tell you, we didn't know what we're doing. But you know, we had hope in the God of heaven. And we could see nothing much was happening there. And they told us she'd probably never walk properly again, because in surgery it's easy to cut a nerve sometimes, you know. So we put a bed in my lounge room, and we put her in the bed, and we kept that brace there. And it was winter time, and I said to my boys, "Go and dig up me a heap of comfrey," because in the winter we had frost, we didn't have snow, And they dug me up a huge amount of comfrey and put it in the back shed, in the back fridge. And what I would do every night, I'd wash it and then grate it. And I'd grate it on a tiny little grater and I'd put it in a cloth. So I'll show you how I made this poultice. We'll do it up here. Because I knew that comfrey did all of that. So I'd get a cloth about that big. Remember I said we had lots of old sheets, they're the best, thin cotton. And I grated it up to it made about, so it was probably about 2 teaspoons. So what I know that I want to do, I want to cover her knee and probably easily an inch or 2 down her tibia and fibula. So we want an area, you know, a nice big area. And when I grated the comfrey, it goes like chewing gum. It's gooey because it's got the lubricant. It really just looks like chewing gum. It's gooey. And then I folded this over and I folded that over and I folded this over and I folded that over. So I made like a package. So what I'm left with is a package about that big that's full of comfrey. It's that grated root. Now I want the juice to come out, so I would just pour about a teaspoon of boiling water on that, pat it down so that now I've got the comfrey juice coming out, and I'll put it over the area and I'd cover it with a piece of plastic, and the plastic is about that big, and the plastic's there to insulate it so that it doesn't chill, and also to keep it from soiling whatever touches it. And then I bandaged it on, and then we prayed. We said, Father in heaven, we don't know what we're doing, but we know that comfrey can do all of that. And remember what we also had, Marbone Lang had put it into place. So we knew that we had that. You know that when we put that on her leg, in hospital, she was having to have morphine for the pain. And when we got her home, especially when we got her foot massaged and the blood coming in and out, she didn't need any painkillers. No more painkillers. Every day, we'd sponge wash her. For bathroom, we'd just give her a pan. And so she just stayed in that bed. We knew we had to immobilise that leg. Oh, sorry, mobilise. Immobilise. Anyway, we had to keep the leg straight. And we knew the Velcro strips would keep it there. We knew we had to keep her in bed so that those bones would knit. After about 3 weeks, I came in one morning, she said, Barbara, something happened last night. I said, what? She said, I just felt movement in that leg. I don't know, she said it was like, it was hard to explain, but she said something was happening there. It didn't hurt. But it's like something was happening there, because every night we'd do this poultice, every night, and we'd leave it on all night. And in the morning we'd wash it off. Sometimes we'd wheel her out and put her in the sunshine. In fact, she got lovely brown legs in that time. And I said, that's interesting, Katie. I'm not sure what it is, but it's interesting. And then I sat down in the lounge room and I was reading through the book, The Ministry of Healing, and I opened up to where I was at, and it was page 316, and this is what I read. God is constantly employed and using as his servants the things he's made. He made the comfrey. God is constantly employed in upholding and using as his servants the things he's made. He works through the laws of nature, using them as his instruments. They're not self-acting. I said, Katie, listen to this. I believe God's just telling me what happened in there last night. You see, I used to work in the operating theatre and I was the instrument nurse. So when we're in surgery and the surgeon needs a McGill's forceps, they'd look at me, I'd go straight away. Store 4 was where all the instruments were. They're all in sterile packages because surgery is sterile. And I was the instrument nurse. I'd memorised every area, and so I went straight in, grabbed what he needed, opened it, got the sterile tongs, pick it up, straight into the surgeon's hand. I was the instrument nurse. So when this sentence says, God is constantly employed in upholding and using as his servants the things he's made, he works through the laws of nature, using them as his instruments. I think I'm still the instrument nurse. Here they are, here. The instrument nurse. Now, I made sure that Katie was doing all of these every day. And every day we thanked God for what he was doing in that leg. Because I have to tell you, we didn't know what we're doing. But all we knew was that the comfrey cream does that. Katie was carrying about 20 kilos, so that's 40-pound excess weight. In the 6 weeks we had her in bed, she lost that excess weight. Because I gave her breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and she didn't have anything to eat at night. And we got the carbohydrates right down, but we gave her lots of fibre, generous proteins every day, and great fats. And she actually lost weight. After 6 weeks, we got her up with crutches, and oh, she was so happy to finally have a shower and go to the bathroom by herself. After 8 weeks, we got her to start little by little putting a bit of weight on her leg. Her body was her guide. Your body can tell you what no man can tell you. And we just said, Katie, just as the body says. And so little by little, she started to put more weight on that leg. And then we got her a walking frame. So what are we looking at? 6 weeks in the bed, 8 weeks she's on crutches, taking a bit of weight, and then the walking frame. In 3 months, she was just walking. And I used to say to Katie, Katie, show the guests how you can run. Not a mark on her leg, not a mark. So with great excitement, I think 3.5 months, she went back to the doctor and he x-rayed it and he said it mustn't have been broken. It was all totally healed. He said it mustn't have been broken. But you know what we saw? Well, I didn't see it. William saw it. That bone was up like this. It was a total break. So that's pretty exciting what comfrey can do. Yes?
You said in the spring, summer you use the leaves. What do you use the rest of the year?
The root.
The root in the fall?
Yeah. All the healing properties go into the root in the winter and they all go into the leaf in the spring and summer. So if it was spring and summer, then you get a mortar and pestle. And that's what I did on my little toe. Remember I said I broke my little toe. I think for 3 weeks, every single night, I just mortar and pestled. Or I did something else that a lot of people don't like, but I just think it's the easiest way. You just chew the leaf up till it goes like goo and then put it into the leaf. It's all nice and gooey then. And I actually put that straight onto my leg because it was so nice and gooey, and then put a cloth over it, a bit of plastic, and bound it on. I did that every night for 3 weeks, and then I was travelling and I couldn't get any more comfrey, but by then it was fairly well healed. So for healing bones, the comfrey is the best. I gave you my daughter's website. It's Misty Mountain USA, and she sells the comfrey cream. She makes her own comfrey cream. But if you can get comfrey, it's a great herb to have in your home because of its ability to knit bone. That's its nickname, knit bone.
Say the website again, please.
Pardon?
The website?
Misty Mountain USA. Full name, Misty Mountain USA, www.mistymountainusa.com. Most comfrey creams that you buy in the shop are white. Emma's is dark green. Now, 6 months later, you see the comfrey went into the back fridge. You know, sometimes people have got a second fridge in their house. And I went out one day and I thought, what's that comfrey still doing there? Because we'd used it and we weren't using it anymore. It's shooting. And it's been in the fridge for probably 8 months. And it's shooting. That's because it's got a growth stimulant. So I'm just warning you, don't put it in your garden. It'll just take over. But it's quite possible because you have snow, it'll just die off every year, and that'll keep it under control. Bones can heal bones can revive, bones can even grow when you're giving them the right conditions. Are there any questions? Yes?
So I'm prone to a lot of calcium deposits in bone spurs.
Okay, what do you do to calcium deposits and bone spurs? And the question is, why is the calcium deposit on my bone and not in my bone? One of the reasons is a high acid diet, which we're going to define tomorrow. And I've just touched on a few things that are high acid. What happens when you've got a high acid diet, which is that carbohydrate list we looked at, high acid, meat is high acid. So what happens is that the acidity in the body requires to be neutralised, and calcium doesn't. So calcium is pulled out of the bones in a form of calcium phosphate, and it immediately neutralises that growing acidity. But then the body has to do something with that calcium phosphate, so it'll often dump it on the bones as bone spurs. And if someone's taking calcium supplements, often they can be dumped. But there is a way to get rid of the bone spurs, and that's castor oil compresses. Castor oil will little by little break down bone spurs, but I've got some good news, it won't break down your bone. Remember Psalm 104 verse 14, where God says that He gave herbs for the service of man. So they work with the needs in the body. The castor oil will break up unnatural formations. So what a lady showed me when I was in Nebraska a few weeks ago. So this is, I'm not a great foot drawer, but this is her big toe, and she had a bunion like that. So there's the other toes, something like that. Sorry. So that, she had a bunion, and she showed me her toe, and her toe was like this. She said 2 months of castor oil every night had broken that bunion down. And they can be very uncomfortable, especially ladies who, you can't wear your beautiful shoes anymore. And by the way, those tight little stiletto beautiful shoes are part of the cause. So be careful on your footwear. But the castor oil, how long will it take? If the bone spur's been there 3 years, it might take 3 months. If the bone spur's been there 3 months, it might take 3 weeks. If the bone spur's been there 3 weeks, it might only take 3 days. Consistency is the key. Yes?
So alcohol is poison. Tinctures. What are your feelings on a tincture?
What about alcoholic tinctures? My suggestion is put them on the skin. Within 2 minutes, your blood has taken up the actives in the tincture, but it won't take in the alcohol. It might be a bit sticky, and after 10 minutes you just wash it, because in 2 minutes it will take up the herbs. Yes?
Could the growth stimulant in comfrey, if you chew on it, could it help with teeth cavities?
It's certainly worth, you could try that. Nadine Artemis is an author that's written a very interesting book on teeth. Now I hope that spelling's right, Nadine Artemis. And she also talks about the importance of oil pulling, putting the coconut oil in the mouth and swishing, of cleaning the teeth between, even putting some essential oil on your dental floss before you floss your teeth. So there's lots of little tricks that you can do to keep those teeth healthy. But remember, we want to strengthen them from the inside. Yes?
It's not quite a question, but lower back and disc regeneration, like when degenerative discs, is there something you can do for lower back?
You certainly can do for lower back, and one is very mindful of how you bend, how you lift, and also strengthening core muscles, because all your core muscles are all linked to your lower back. So strengthening core muscles will strengthen your lower back, and when you strengthen those muscles, remember they nourish and feed the bones.
And is there anything you can do for pain for that in the meantime?
For inflammation, you can make a grated ginger poultice, similar to what I made with the comfrey. Ginger is A ginger poultice will pull inflammation out. So if there's inflammation there and you wear a ginger poultice on your lower back, you'd have to lay down with your knees up so that your back is flat against the poultice. Within half an hour, it often gets very hot. And that's an indication that the inflammation's being pulled out. But that heat can be very, very comforting. But try only do it for a couple of hours a day, because you keep pulling out more inflammation, it can irritate the skin. Won't hurt, it'll just irritate. Yes?
The castor oil compress on the bunion is, I'm looking at instruction, is that like 8 hours at night?
Yeah, overnight's the easiest
Like
place.
not more than 8 hours? Or
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
You do it like,
24/7 if you want
you
it.
do it 24/7?
If you did it on your abdomen 24/7, you might start to go to the toilet a bit too much. But you want several layers of cloth and just moisten it with the castor oil, then put it on. You can use the same compress night after night after night, and maybe put a little bit more on. So it's great for gallstones, kidney stones, bone spurs, tumours, cysts, fibroids.
Is there a carrier oil in that, or just the castor?
The castor oil penetrates very deep. If you're familiar with DMSO, if that's put on the skin in a few drops, it can bring the oil in even a bit deeper.
What is that one?
DMSO.
Organic castor oil?
Well, they don't spray castor oil. You know, just whatever you can get. Yeah.
Rotator cuff, will the castor oil or the comfrey oil, comfrey poultice?
Yeah, you notice that rotator cuff covers a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things. And what you've got to be careful with an injury, you don't cradle your injury. You've got to listen to the body. It'll tell you what you can and you can't do, but you still have to keep it active so you don't freeze it. And the hot and cold's in the shower, and then castor oil overnight, maybe comfrey cream through the day. Yes?
Yeah, this is a hard question to ask, but would you suggest a bone marrow? I have a bone marrow disorder of some sort, and they were going to do a biopsy, but people say it's really painful. I don't really know if it's necessary. They
Yeah.
already know that I have 2 red blood cells, which I think the whole thing, they check genetics, it's not that. It's either old age, and I don't think I'm that old, or it's this benzene clean solution that they have in this APAP machine. I know this is what I'm saying a lot, but I think I had held it for 5 days and nights, and so I think it did something to the bone marrow. That's what I think.
Well, I wouldn't have a bone marrow biopsy.
I don't want to.
Don't.
I don't know what it's going to prove.
You're the master of your destiny. You can say, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I can stop the process. I'm questioning it now.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it, because it's not going to help. And it will damage. Whenever they do a biopsy, they've just damaged the tissue.
That's what I'm wondering,
It's true. Yes?
You spoke about birth control that has estrogen in it, but there's some that have just progesterone. Is that like authentic, or it's still?
No, you see, progesterone is the one that's naturally made by the body, but the chemical one is progestin or progestone. You don't want that because it's a chemical form or a synthetic hormone, so you don't want that one.
What does it do to your body?
What it does is it competes with the progesterone receptor sites, so it blocks your receptor sites from taking up the natural progesterone, and that, of course, means your mother progesterone isn't what she should be, and that can cause imbalances in the other hormones. Yes?
What is DSO?
Dimethyl.
What is it used for?
It's actually a byproduct. I think it's a byproduct of wood making, wood processing. I'm not exactly sure, but you can. And one of the beauties of DMSO is it dissolves in water and it dissolves in oil, and that's why it's quite unique in the way it can pull the castor oil deeper into the body. But we've been using castor oil for years without DMSO, so you don't have to have DMSO. Dimethyl sulf oxide, I think it is, yeah.
sounds like we should all get our hormones tested or just supplement with
No,
progesterone.
no need for testing hormones because your symptoms will tell you. And if you have a blood test, it's not accurate because all your hormones in your blood at any given time aren't all biologically active. And if you're not sure and you go on the hormone balancing cream, you've lost nothing because you can't have too much progesterone. You can't have too much mother and too much happy hormone. Yeah?
I have a friend that just had some testing, and she was told that her testosterone was 10%, and I forget what she's taking, but she says it increased her energy. That's all I remember what she told me. But the testosterone, any testosterone?
Well, when you've got adequate progesterone levels, that automatically balances estrogen, testosterone, your adrenal hormones. So boosting progesterone helps to balance all of them. Yeah? So a clavicle.
From a fall of injury,
Yeah.
would you recommend the castor oil or the comfrey?
Both. You could alternate. Yeah?
We had talked about what produces the progesterone was in the uterus. If you had had a hysterectomy, what
It's your ovaries that produce the hormones. And if you've had a total hysterectomy of taking your ovaries and your uterus, your adrenal glands kick in and they can start to make small amounts.
So we still continue to cycle?
Yeah.
Due to the hormone.
Yeah.
And the yam cream will.
The yam cream will balance that, yeah. Because if someone's estrogen's too high and their progesterone's low and they go through menopause, both the hormones drop, but they're still out of balance. So even after menopause, there still needs to be that balance because many women who are on the pill in their 20s and now in their 60s and they've gone through menopause and they say, well, I don't really need the cream, I've gone through menopause. But you know what they're just showing up? Osteoporosis. And they don't realise that it's because of that imbalance. So I met a 92-year-old lady who was on the Anna's Yam cream for her osteoporosis. I also met a 9-year-old girl who was on it to balance her hormones because she got her periods early. So if you're between 9 and 90, it'll work. Yeah?
I have two questions. The comfrey, can that be used on people who've had surgery, bone surgery for something like a spinal issue or anything like that? Can it help for nerve damage or?
It certainly can help to revive, but just a word of warning, if you've got spare parts, the comfrey can pull the spare parts out.
Ooh.
I'd read about this, I'd heard about this, and I met a lady in Sweden last year, and she told me she'd had about 5 surgeries on her legs. She had serious injuries, and she said, I'm doing comfrey poultices. She said it pulled all my spare parts out. You may want them out, you may not.
And what about rheumatoid arthritis?
For rheumatoid arthritis, I'll be covering arthritis tomorrow when we look at the acid-alkaline balance. So we'll look at it in detail then.
Spare parts as in like pins and...
Yeah, pins and plates and things like that.
Don't want that.
Yes?
What I find here in the Carolina States here, with older people, the reason why they have issues with their back is because of their feet. The arch in their feet is not proper.
That is true, and good footwear is vital. I probably spend more money on my footwear than anything else. And you're absolutely right. I have a friend who wore stilettos all through her teens and 20s, and she was unable to deliver her baby. She had to have Caesars, and they said it's because of what it had done to her hips. And of course our hips and our spine are closely connected. So you're absolutely right. And the best way to strengthen your arch is the rebounding, doing this. This is how you strengthen your arch, is toe striking. Very important to toe strike whenever you run. Obviously when we walk we heel strike, but when you're running it should be toe strike. You try and run on that grass barefoot on your heels, you will not. Your body will not let you. But they've got all these padded joggers today that encourage heel striking. So that weakens the arch, weakens the hamstrings, the hips, all of that. Yes?
Can you use comfrey on a spinal cord injury?
Yes, yeah. You see, it's got a growth stimulant. That stimulates rapid healing in ligament, in muscle, in tendon, in bone, and in skin. Any tissue, it'll stimulate rapid healing. Yes?
With a hip injury too, then you could use the comfrey.
It certainly could help with a hip injury, that's right.
Is there a type of shoe that you recommend?
My favourite are Birkenstocks. So I live in Birkenstocks at home. I think a few people here have Birkenstocks. So the Birkenstocks are good, and there are some similar ones to Birkenstocks too you can buy. Yeah.
Shingles.
Shingles has to run its course.
But it's better when you're left with that big red scar on your back and that.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to use castor oil.
Yeah, castor oil. I heard recently that apple cider vinegars is good on shingles. When it's...
How do you spell it? Oh, the capsaicin, that's with the...
So apple cider vinegar, it's probably my accent.
Oh, apple cider.
Yeah. And my husband had shingles in the eye, and it was up here. He said it's the most painful thing he's ever had in his life, and he found the one thing that brought him just a little bit of relief was hot and coals in the shower. It's hard there because it's such a tender area, but if it's on the torso, and you know, apple cider vinegar near the eye is not a happy place, and also cayenne pepper near the eye. But one lady told me that she was able to buy capsicum cream, it's a cayenne pepper cream from the pharmacist, and she said that brought a little bit of relief.
Is going barefoot good for you?
Fantastic. Going barefoot. Is going barefoot good for you? It's very good for you, and we all should do it every day, get a bit of earthing, and every time I put my clothes on the line I go barefoot. So that means we've also got to buy a clothesline. Yeah?
I'm not sure if this relates to this topic, but I'm thinking of the MMS drops.
Yeah.
Think that's
MMS.
a good thing, or
Yeah, that's minerals.
I heard it cannot hurt you.
No, it cannot hurt you, no. So we might have a little break now and come back at 6 o'clock. And when we come back at 6 o'clock, we're going to look at the importance of sleep and how you can increase it and when you need to sleep.